changed our mission statement to be something very simple with three main points. Number one, to reduce crime. Number two, to improve the quality of life. And number three, to do it with the community, cooperative partnership. So now it's simple. You could ask every officer on the street, what's the mission statement? And they would tell you because they know exactly in their head. So what's your main focus? And that's it. So we established what that main focus was. And then we brought in this focus on four. And the focus on four is just like, are you firing on all four cylinders? And if you are, you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And those are obviously intelligence-led policing, which is critical. That's one. Two is the tactical relocation or reallocation of resources. Are you moving your resources around on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis? Are you adjusting? And number three is, are you engaged with your community? Are you doing it with your community? And then number four, the most important part, are you being proactive?
Well, Chief, welcome to the program. We're recording this a little while after we had the tragic shooting in Pennsylvania where 5 police officers were shot, 3 killed. Sort of another in line of the rise in ambush shootings, something we talked about on this podcast quite a bit with other chiefs, that while we're seeing the number of officers shot and killed go down this year, the ambush shootings were, as you know, a shooting was just unexpected, happens, is on the increase. And I know you had one recently with Master Police Officer Jordan Laupert. Just curious your thoughts on this trend, what you're seeing, and sort of the things that maybe, police departments need to think about in these ambush shootings.
No, absolutely. It's disturbing to say the least. But what's, important to me is that the cops are still out there doing their job and taking care of one another. In that particular case, in Jordan's case, we had an individual that came to our district office near Busch Gardens. And they come in the front door and they're looking to make a complaint on an officer. And basically they got what they needed and they walked to the back of the area, which is secured by a fence. And the citizen sees Jordan, calls him over. They have a conversation. The conversation ends with thank you. The officer turns, walks the other way, gets about 25 yards, almost to the back door, and is shot in the leg. And it's clear that was his intention, had no idea in that scenario. And thank goodness there were officers right there that were able to put a tourniquet on and saved his life. Had that not happened, had the bullet hit him a little bit higher, a tourniquet wouldn't have worked. So it worked out where he survived that and he's doing well. But the first thing that came to my mind is obviously, what can we do? What are we doing? Wearing your vest is important. We've outfitted all of our officers with an additional rifle plate on the front of their vest. So most agencies do that. I would imagine if not, that is something that's a good investment. It's not the standard plate that goes on the vest, but it's actually a rifle plate that goes and inserts. And that's something we outfitted all our officers with probably about 2 years ago.
Did you face any resistance to? Because I assume that might be added weight to the vest.
It's not that much, and they were actually pleased to have it. No resistance at all.
Yeah, and I think one thing that reading about the officer, first of all, came to the district. That's sort of like
Right.
that's, and the officer and watching the body camera footage, having a casual conversation with the guy and says thank you and everything else. It's just, I think it also highlights, and something we've been talking a lot about, that and police departments, police chiefs around the country know that, like, the mental health crisis that's occurring in the country, where your officers are constantly dealing with folks that are in a mental health crisis. And I don't know if that's being said or talked about enough, and what we expect from our officers, especially these young officers out on the street, dealing with someone who's in a mental health crisis.
Yeah, it's clear that's the case, but this is, much more than that. It's obvious his intentions were to shoot the officer for whatever reason going on. So this, clearly somebody with a mental health crisis to that level should not be on the street. And that's one of the things we did, is we had looked into that. There were no precursors there, no history there that gave us any forewarning that this individual would do something like that. That's the scary part. Usually if you have the intelligence, you can predict and try to mitigate and prevent. But in this situation, we didn't have any of that.
Yeah. unexpected. And and again, I think that's, thankfully the national FOP is the only, organization collecting data on officers who are shot and killed. And like, we wouldn't know about this trend except for the data they're collecting, where you're just seeing this like straight up trend on ambush shootings this year, which is extremely alarming. Now, you joined the Tampa Police Department in 1997. You worked all the districts, and done it all. And but you're known for your crime reduction initiatives, and also known for managing large scale events in Tampa, Super Bowl, RNC, a bunch of other things. Before I get to the things that you're doing around crime fighting and reducing crime, you know, the assassination of Charlie Kirk occurred not too long ago. Obviously, sort of the rise in political violence around sort of large scale events. Got the World Cup coming up, got the Olympics coming up. Just your thoughts on how the sort of things have changed, and your experience around dealing with large scale events. Is it different today, and or what new things should agencies and chiefs and politicians be thinking about when we're having these large scale events?
No, absolutely. There's much more to think about, much more manpower, much more thought into it. We have a unit called our Special Incident Management Unit that does nothing but plan and prepare for events like that. And Kirk was here. He was here several months before at University of South Florida. And before that, he was at our convention center. Obviously, we're looking at, could that have happened here? I don't think so based on what we do, but you never know until you're in that situation. But we do have a unit solely for that. Operating drones, looking above, is something that we've incorporated into our best practices. Barriers, checkpoints. It's so much more than what it was 10 years ago, of course, 20 years ago. And the amount of resources and personnel that are required into it, the old methodology of determining if you have enough police officers for a certain area, I think that's all out of the game now because there's so much more at stake. And it's so labor intensive, but it's worth it in the end if you can do everything you can to mitigate it and keep it as safe as you can.
Yeah. I got to imagine drones are becoming a bigger part of this because you can just get eyes up in the sky, and like that's something that was not a thing a few years ago, and drones are getting better, and things that you can do with the video feed, the live video feed is providing, your team, eyes in the sky. Like I assume that's an integral part of any large scale event going forward.
Especially for us downtown with all the skyscrapers. It's very difficult to get a good situational awareness with that. So the drones are a huge asset for that.
Yeah. Now, reason besides you are known for trying new technologies and getting the best technologies into your department, and like you've become a real national leader on artificial intelligence. Like you're leading the way and putting AI, or using AI that will help your officers and help keep your community safe. But what really caught my attention was an op-ed that you wrote, which we did include in the weekly briefing, which is my Substack that goes out every Monday morning to 1,500 police leaders across the country. And the title was "How Tampa Drove Down Crime." And just the intro, for example, Tampa didn't just see crime fall; it led the nation. While murders dropped 20% nationwide, Tampa recorded a 63% decline in the first half of this year. And so maybe just let's dig into a few of the main points, because you talk about focus on the four, you talk about community policing, you talk about your violent impact player program, obviously technology that we just talked about, and focused deterrence. Like, start wherever you want to, but like, I mean, this is a strategy. Like, this is not happening by accident. And just curious, sharing your wisdom around how to reduce crime in cities.
Well, the main reason I wrote that op ed was based on a New York Times article that came out. It was an editorial, and it was probably about 2 weeks before that op ed. And while everything in there was factual, but it based most of the national crime decline on societal changes and COVID and the pandemic, which, sure, that's a factor, but it's not the predominant factor. The factor that's really making a difference is the cops out on the street. And that was the reason for me putting this together, is because cops are the ones that drive down crime. That's shown by Bill Bratton back in the 90s. And I just wanted to tell Tampa's story on how we did that. So,
I didn't know that was the impetus,
yes,
but I did see that op-ed in the New York Times, and it drove me crazy
right.
because obviously you and I both know Commissioner Bratton, and he preaches all the time, "Cops count, police
Hmm.
matter," and that whole op-ed was to your point, just discounting what the men and women are policing are
It did,
doing.
it touched on a little bit, but it didn't. That's not, they're basically saying the predominant factor was societal ebbs and flows and accountability and order in society. Those are all factors, but the predominant factor
Mhm.
is the cops on the street. And that's something that's proven here. Back in 2003, Tampa changed its model on how we do policing. We started adding accountability. We started something as simple as the department's mission statement. When I first started, actually in 97 is when I started full time. I was a reserve officer in 96. But when I started, I couldn't tell you what the mission statement was. Our mission statement was probably 2 paragraphs long that talked about protecting and serving. Couldn't tell you what it was. Back in 2003, when Mayor Iorio came, we changed our mission statement to be something very simple with 3 main points. Number one, to reduce crime. Number two, to improve the quality of life. And number three, to do it with the community, cooperative partnership. So now it's simple. You could ask every officer on the street, what's the mission statement? And they would tell you because they know exactly in their head. So what's your main focus? And that's it. So we established what that main focus was. And then we brought in this focus on four. And the focus on four is just like, are you firing on all 4 cylinders? And if you are, you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And those are obviously intelligence led policing, which is critical. That's one. Two is the tactical relocation or reallocation of resources. Are you moving your resources around on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis? Are you adjusting? And number three is are you engaged with your community? Are you doing it with your community? And then number four, the most important part, are you being proactive? And how are you being proactive? So what are you doing on those 4 principles there? And if they're all firing on all 4 cylinders, you're going to get a significant crime reduction, a well above and below what the New York Times was saying in their article. So in that case, to focus on four is something we started in 2003, ebbs and flows there. You have to keep adjusting and changing. I'll give you a recent example with community policing. And we all know the community has to help the police. It's not us doing the work ourselves. But something simple as a ComStat meeting, right? You have to evolve those. What did we recently evolve in our ComStat meetings? We have our hotspot maps and our areas where crime is high. How can we integrate the community to help us with that? So we have our neighborhood watch groups. So we put our neighborhood watch groups in an overlay on our maps. Do our neighborhood watch groups exist in the areas where crime is high? And if not, why not? And what are we doing to get neighborhood watch groups up and going in those neighborhoods? And that's something that's worked really well for us. So if we have a hotspot area with crime, is there a neighborhood watch group there? If not, how can we get one? Just this year, we've added about 8 neighborhood watch groups with that initiative. Now we have the community working more with us to report crime and reduce crime. So that's just one way of evolving.
Yeah. Yeah, I like, and by the way, like I didn't know that about the mission statement. I mean, but it makes total sense. Like, you need to know what your job
Right.
is. Like, and it's clear, and I loved hearing it. Like, it's reducing crime, improving quality of life, and working with the community. So if you're an officer out on the street or anyone within the police department or the community, they understand what the mission of the Tampa Police Department, what the mission is.
And community policing is paramount, right? You don't just have officers that are assigned to community policing. It has to be interwoven into every assignment. So, for example, we tell a story about an officer that responded to a burglary call. We had an elderly lady who had her house burglarized. You can imagine how traumatizing that was for her. She lives alone. Her house was broken into. Her valuables were taken. So she's already highly upset. The officer goes to her house, takes the time to investigate, but after that takes the time to walk around her house and notices that the front porch light is out. Then the officer takes it upon himself to go to the store, get the light bulb, replace the light for her, then give her his card, give her her name, the report number, and then sit out in front of her house to finish the report. So at the end, she was traumatized about a burglary, but now she knows the officer's name that patrols her area, his phone number, that he'll go above and beyond to help her out, and how she can get a hold of him. So we've turned that encounter into a community. It's a regular police call. We've turned it into a community police, and it's not always just giving out ice cream or playing basketball. Those are
Hmm.
important, but you have to interwoven it into every call that you do. And that's an example of one.
Yeah. Yeah. And something Chief Kevin Davis from Fairfax County, Virginia, talked about our first episode. Like, as he instills in all of his officers, turn any encounter into an encounter to build a relationship with the community. And it could be a crime scene, which that's unfortunate that you're there at that time, but like, but you can start building those relationships even then with not just the victims, obviously, but also the witnesses and folks in the community who start coming around. So, yeah, that is the importance of community partnerships. But, I think that what I maybe that this is not the right statement to make, but everyone talks about community policing, and that is paramount in terms of the partnerships and the understanding of the community. But it's coupled with everything else that you were talking about, right? Running a CompStat program, moving your officers around, putting as back to what Bill Bratton and those guys would say back in the day, cops on the dots. Curious also that so you're moving officers to where they need to be when it comes to crime hotspots. I know you do work around a violent impact player program and focused deterrence. Uh, talk to me a little bit about that and how does that fit into the overall your overall crime fighting strategy?
Right. So it's not just geographic based, we're also offender based. In the VIP program, Violent Impact Player is the trigger pullers, right? So we're looking at the trigger pullers, trying to prevent another shooting, identifying the trigger pullers. And that's something that's a challenge for us to do. We're effective at it. We do go around and talk to other departments about what works for us. It may not work well for other departments, but it does work for us. So we identify whether you were a victim of a shooting, whether you were a suspect in a shooting, whether you were a shooter in your arrest, your gang affiliation, and we put all that into a formula, and it rates you as your likelihood of being involved in a shooting, whether being shot or shooting. So we had the University of South Florida validate this program because obviously we want to be fair. And they validated it and studied it. And initially they saw a significant reduction in crime in the first 2 years after that, because now we're engaged with somebody likely to be shot or to shoot. And then the focused deterrence, we recently got a CVI grant, Community Violence Intervention. It's a $1.5 million grant to do that. And we're not experts in everything, and everybody wants us to do. So we reached out to an organization called Safe and Sound that works with at-risk youth. And we basically used them to help us facilitate that. And they created this program where first-time gun offenders could be diverted into this program. We just graduated our first class about a month ago, and I was there. It was a great event. There was probably maybe two and a half dozen kids there, all engaging with the cops. And I was looking around the room, and I said to myself, every one of these kids would have been involved in a shooting if we didn't have this program. So
Hmm.
that's huge. We were fortunate to have that grant. We were fortunate to get Safe and Sound to help us with it. But that's every little piece of the puzzle coming together. It took 2 years to get that up and going.
Yeah. Now, Chief Bercaw has his PhD in criminal justice, and certainly that we know, and like he's putting this into practice, like a small number of locations, street segments, street corners, addresses account for a disproportionate share of crime. And just like with the violent impact player program, a small number of offenders, the trigger pullers, as you say, commit a disproportionate share of crime. And, when a department like Tampa focuses on sort of those truisms in criminology, like you see these outsized results that I believe that you're seeing in Tampa. And like you said, back to the New York Times article, and there have been other articles, like not just to pick on the New York Times article, but there have been others that give credit to everything else other than the good work that police departments are doing across the country.
I'll tell you one other thing we do on that. Juveniles, we all know that juveniles are a problem. And typically they start with stealing cars or breaking into cars. And we do what we call our wow checks, which are the worst of the worst. So if a juvenile is arrested on, let's say, grand theft auto, they may be put on probation, and they may have sanctions with the probation. And the sanctions might be a 9 p.m. curfew or a home detention. Now, traditionally, that's the Department of Juvenile Justice to ensure that they're following what's outlined in their probation, but we assist them and we help. We do checks on our juveniles. The officers that work their zones know the juveniles that are on probation and that have sanctions and that have to be home by 9, and they will go and they will check to see if they're home. They'll have conversations with their parents, so they'll assist the parents with that. So that's something that's been highly successful because we're trying to keep them from becoming repeat offenders. And by doing that, we're keeping them out of the system and keeping our crime down low. When we first started that, I can tell you it wasn't popular with the officers because they're going to say, I don't want to do the job of a
Mm.
probation officer. But it means
Right.
they're investigating less grand theft autos and less auto burglaries. It's paying off, and they see those results now.
Yeah. Just curious, just thinking as you're talking, like you're doing all these great things. Like, how do you keep it organized within a department? Like, how is your leadership team organized? Like, how do you keep this strategy and all the things you're doing under this strategy sort of moving forward?
That's a great question. Sometimes I ask myself how we do that because when I compare myself to other agencies, we're very lean at the top, and we have a lot, or the majority of our front line is where it is. I mean, we're an agency where we have just over 1,000 full-time officers. Then we have about another 150 reserve part-time officers, and then another 300 professional staff. But we have one chief, me, and 2 assistant chiefs, and then 6 majors. That's our executive staff. And compared to other agencies our size, it is lean, but it's something that's woven in our practices that we do. We have daily reports we review, we have weekly reports and monthly reports, and we adjust things daily. We have 2 staff meetings a week where we discuss crime trends and what's happening. Each district, we have 3 districts, has a weekly crime meeting. Then we have a weekly violent crime meeting for the entire city. And then, of course, we have our monthly ComStat meetings. So we're staying engaged daily, weekly, and monthly, and not just ourselves. We include the sheriff's office, we include partner agencies, the state attorney and the U.S. attorney, and our federal and state partners. So we look at it as a team approach.
And just speaking of federal partners, because we've covered this a lot, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but obviously, a lot in the news recently in terms of the federal government coming into cities like DC and Memphis. But it seems to me every time I've talked to a police chief or a sheriff or a state police leader, I think the message has been they welcome the federal partnership when done right. You've always worked with federal partners. It's how you work with federal partners. And anytime the feds can provide assistance working in close collaboration, it seems to be a good thing. I don't know if you have any comment about
I'll tell you, I was at a major
that.
city chiefs meeting a couple months ago, and the assistant chief from Metro DC was there, and he gave a presentation on how they facilitated and managed the National Guard coming in. And I was so impressed because they had a plan ready, they had assignments for them. So they were very prepared. If any city is out there listening, reach out to DC because they were prepared. They had assignments for them. If you give them something to do to help you, they'll do it. They had it laid out like a huge entire operation with multiple command posts and preset assignments for them when they arrived.
Yeah. And it just struck me because I think I spent a lot of time in DC. There was all the debate about the crime statistics, whether crime was down as far as it was. But I think a lot of that missed the point. Like, and something you mentioned as part of your mission statement, uh, you know, quality life disorder, just like they found going way back in the 90s in New York, like that drives perception of crime and fear of crime. And like having that in your mission statement, like it is important to improve the quality of life in a city. And I think, if you see visible signs of disorder, then you think crime is higher than what it may be. Now, I'm not saying that's the entire case in DC, but if you see visible signs of disorder, people do think that, I mean, the research has shown that they do think that crime is out of control, whether the numbers bear that out or
And
not.
then add on social media, and it just catapults that, which I got to give a shout out for our communications team. we go above and beyond to share all those things that we do in the community so people see it and know what we're doing. I'll give you a recent example. We had officers that went to an apartment complex that's known for a higher level of crime. And they get out. As soon as they get out of the car, all the kids come running up to see the officer, smiling, engaging, all the right things. So the officer takes it upon herself to show the kids how fingerprint dust works and does a whole exercise with them on the back of the car and shows them how she can pull the fingerprint up. And that just went viral on social media. And those kids at the end love the cops, and then they're going to trust them, and then they're going to call them if
Right.
something happens. But those little things make a
Now,
huge difference.
yeah, for sure, 100%. Now, I talked a little bit earlier, like you are known sort of being thinking about technology, how technology can make a department and communities better. I mean, I tell people all the time, and they ask me about AI and policing, and like, go see Tampa, go talk to Chief Bercaw. Like, now you have a crime gun intelligence center, you use drones. I know you do VR training. You're using AI to do things like write the first draft of a police report, which is saves officers time, gives them time back in their day to go out and do all the things that we've been talking about. Curious, like where do you see technology going? Like, what is the next thing? Not what you're doing today, but like, how are you thinking about like what should be next to help you sort of continue to drive down crime, continue to improve the quality of life in Tampa, and continue to strengthen those community partnerships?
Well, first of all, whatever it is, we need to be on the cutting edge. If we're not, the criminals will be, and then we'll be fighting an uphill battle. So we always want to try to maintain that edge. If the criminals are using AI, we need to be using AI. But where is it going in the future? Whatever's happened in the last 20 years, we're going to see changes in the next 5 years that'll be much more significant than what we've seen in the last 20 years. I wouldn't be surprised to see. There was a magazine I just saw, I think it was on the IACP, where it had the officers on drone looking motorcycles patrolling over the streets. Something like that is highly possible to see in the next 5 years. We could see a version of a police robot in the next 5 years, whatever that may be, a car. So it's going to change. It's going to change fast, and we have to keep up with that and try to maintain that. Otherwise, our cities are going to become crime-ridden areas again, and we can't have that. So we owe it to the community to stay on the cutting edge.
Yeah, I don't. When people ask me, I'd say like anything is possible now. Like things that we thought was truly science fiction, like an officer riding some sort of drone motorcycle, like you might see in Star Wars. Like who knows? Like the way technology is advancing, who knows what war will be in a couple of years? And I do think robotics, by the way, is humanoid robotics, because the world has been built for humans. I don't know what that looks like, but I certainly think there will be humanoid robotics in policing in the very near future.
Well, and we know the glasses. We've seen prototypes of the glasses, but in 5 years, maybe less than 5 years, maybe in 3 years, an officer won't need a body worn camera. They won't need a police radio. It'll all be in their glasses, and you'll be able to do so much just with the glasses.
Yeah, not to get. I just recently there was an article. Mark Zuckerberg, they released their next version of the Meta glasses, and just there were some glitches, and the didn't go well, and people were laughing at it. I wasn't laughing because I knew where like they'll get it right, or somebody will get it right, where you sort of have that heads up display in one lens, and you're able to do everything. And just to your point, like that because you're going to continue to see this convergence of technology, and the glasses is probably where we're going.
Yeah, I'd say probably in 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
Mm. Now we talked about a lot of great things that the department's doing. Is there anything else that you're really proud of uh, at Tampa that you and your department's doing that we haven't talked about?
Well, we obviously talked about the officers, but it's more than that, more than proactive. It's their sense of urgency. Like it's in their DNA. So their sense of urgency on no matter what the crime is. We talked about a burglary before. We think about burglary as a property crime, but they're solving burglaries like they're violent crimes and putting that effort there and going to looking at known offenders and doing whatever they can do to solve that burglary in a rapid pace. The quicker you solve the burglary, the less chance you're going to have another burglary. The quicker you solve an auto burglary, the less chance you're going to have a grand theft auto. You solve those crimes early, chances are you're not going to have as many serious crimes. So we try to focus on five main crimes, which is auto burglary, grand theft auto, robbery, and aggravated assaults. So if we focus on those, then we feel that we're going to prevent other crimes from happening. And that's been one of our success platforms. So that means we treat auto burglaries like they're major crimes. There's some departments out there where people don't even have a police officer come and respond to an auto burglary. We won't do that. We'll treat them like major crimes and solve them, do neighborhood surveys, look on our systems to see if there's a known offender. So I'll give you an example. Say your car's broken into and you call us, we come out. We not only process your car for prints, steering wheel for DNA, but we're looking on our system that we have and we can geolocate any known offenders. So let's say 2 blocks from where your auto burglary occurred, there's a juvenile on home detention for auto burglary. We go check on them. They're not home. There's an investigative lead that we developed that didn't exist before. So they're doing this all almost like an analyst work from the street in real time.
Hmm. Yeah, that's impressive. And you know, I talked to a couple of police chiefs not too long ago. You know, you've seen this trend, and maybe the trend is reversing. Hopefully, as you know, staffing does seem to be increasing in many departments across the country, that they're not responding to certain crimes. Just like you said, and this one chief is like, we're not responding to car break-ins anymore. And then, but it just you just explain, like, if you don't do that, then you're just emboldening those. Like, and so hopefully that is a trend that's changing. Hopefully, you know, hearing folks like yourself, like that to me seems
And
crazy in
we
terms of.
obviously have the benefit of being in Florida and having a mayor that was a police chief. So we were never
Mhm.
defunded. We were always there. We're less than a 5% vacancy rate. So I know there's other agencies that don't have that. It was maybe a year ago, the Cleveland police chief at the time asked me what we were doing to reduce our auto thefts. And I was telling him, and he's like, I'm down hundreds of cops. They just couldn't do it. So fortunately, we were never put in that predicament because of the strong support of our mayor, Jane Castor, who was the police chief before. And people sometimes they ask me, they go, what's it like to work for a mayor that was the police chief? I like it because I can't imagine spending 20 hours a week trying to explain to the mayor what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, where we can finish each other's sentences and we know what needs to be done. So to me, I look at that as a huge positive.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, what's it like being the chief in a blue city in a red state? Because you guys seem to have figured that part out as
The
well.
city is evolving. I would say the city's almost to the point of a red city. It's pretty
Mm.
balanced, which in that case, it
Mhm.
even makes it easier for us because
Yeah.
now we're working not just a blue city or a red city. Now it's a combined.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have people, officers wanting to come to Tampa to be an officer for your department, and also citizens knowing you respond to everything. And you got this crime fighting strategy you had. Last question that I ask everybody, and we might have touched upon some of this, but the question is this: like, what do you think is something that we, talking about the profession and your fellow police chiefs, public safety professionals, what do you think? You know, there's something that we're not thinking enough about that's going to be a big deal in the future.
Well, first of all, you got to take care of the officers, right? And we're always thinking about technology, but we got to think about them and our people because we got to take care of them, find ways to take care of them, and evolve with that. And maybe technology helps with that. There's still too many law enforcement suicides. There's still too many mental health issues. Even with all the new wellness programs, it's still a predominant issue. So we have to take care. We have to make sure it's a point that we're appreciating what they're doing, and going out of our way to appreciate them. It's tough. It's a tough job. So if there's a way that technology can assist and evolve to help take care of our officers and our professional staff, I think that's what we need to look at, because if they're not well and they're not 100%, then how do we expect them to take care of our people? So I would like to see us to continue that and continue taking care of that. So I don't know if you've come across that in your discussions. I've seen technology out there. It's made an impact, but not a significant enough impact.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I think there was a study which we covered in the weekly briefing months ago that uh, Barriers are being broken down to when it comes to officer safety and wellness, and there are more programs out there available to departments and available to and to officers. And the stigma still exists, and there was survey data around this. But what struck me reading the article, officers weren't taking advantage of many of these programs, and it was chalking some of this up to the stigma. Um, but I think part of it is also there's got to be technology that breaks down that barrier that can help them access these programs or different types of programs that will be more beneficial when it comes to officer safety and wellness and suicide prevention, et cetera.
With the peers and the peer counseling, I see that as a huge plus because they're encouraging each other to get the help. That way they don't have to tell their supervisor. So I see that as a great first step. We just got to keep that momentum going.
Well, Chief Bercaw, you're doing some incredible work in Tampa, and I really appreciate you coming on the Briefing Room podcast.
Thank you. It was my honor to be here.
Thank you for joining me this week in the Briefing Room. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Chief Lee Bercaw, the Tampa Police Department. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to policebriefing.com where you can see all prior episodes of the Briefing Room podcast. I hope you'll not only like those episodes, but subscribe to the channel. And also, as you heard us mention throughout the podcast, this is based on my weekly Substack called The Weekly Briefing. And if you go to policebriefing.com, you can find out more information, and you could subscribe to that Substack, and you'll get an email delivered to your inbox every Monday morning with the latest current events and topics that are on your mind, hopefully on your mind when it comes to policing and public safety. Thank you again. I hope to see you back here next week.